I'm Kalilah Reynolds and welcome to Taking Stock. We're bringing you all the latest business news and telling you how it will affect you and your money. But before we get started, head over to my website, KalilahReynolds.com, to subscribe to our newsletter. And while you're there, you can check out our other financial news and videos. You can click the link up here or in the description box below. Now, come on, let's get this money.
First up, many Jamaicans have been crying about high electricity bills, especially since the coronavirus outbreak. We have a Taking Stock exclusive with the brand new president and CEO of JPS, Michel Gantois. And later, the analysts weigh in on the latest market developments. Fontana has more than doubled profits for the first quarter, and Eppley Caribbean Property Fund has announced another share buyback. We'll discuss.
But first, here's What's Hot, brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers, your best interest at heart.
Operators of Highway 2000 East-West Trans-Jamaican Highway announced plans to bid on 2 toll roads set for construction in the short term. They want to operate the 15-kilometer Montego Bay Bypass toll road in St. James. Government pushed back plans to start construction by a year to 2022 due to COVID-19. Meanwhile, non-executive director Ivan Anderson said the toll road operator will bid to own and operate the Maypen to Williamsfield leg of Highway 2000 East-West. Trans-Jamaican Highway has the right of first refusal based on contractual rights. Anderson said both thoroughfares would increase revenue for the company, presently losing money due to lockdown measures. Scotiabank Jamaica said it would give tutorials on digital banking to senior citizens. The initiative comes weeks after the bank announced the closure of 2 branches and the transition of 6 others to digital only. The bank opened 9 branches on Saturday to provide assistance and coaching, with plans to do the same on Saturday, December 5. The bank also plans to do special tutorials in branch and publish a series of video-based content and guides on its website. Special digital banking representatives have also been assigned to branches. Jamaicans abroad sent home 38% more money this September than they did last September. Between April and September 2020, net remittance inflows increased by 30% despite the pandemic to $1.4 billion, according to data from the Bank of Jamaica. Overall, for the January to September 2020 period, remittance inflows totaled almost $2.1 billion. 2/3 of all remittances comes from the USA, with a balance from Canada, UK, and Cayman Islands. The US economy grew 33% in the July to September period compared with year-earlier levels, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, BEA. The BEA is the most important of 3 bodies utilized to cross-reference growth estimates on United States growth. The outturn is the largest quarterly gain on records going back to 1947, surpassing the old mark of almost 17% in 1950. The economy, however, remains in recovery mode since the onset of the pandemic in the March quarter. The U.S. economy suffered from over 1 million job losses and thousands of business closures over the period. For instance, the economy dipped just over 31% between April and June, following a slide of 5% in the first 3 months. Economists expect slow growth in the October to December quarter and economic decline in the March 2021 quarter due to the resurgence of the pandemic. Jamaica's 2 telecoms operators, Digicel and Flow, want tax relief as the operators begin transitioning to new 5G technology. In their words, they want more public-private partnership to improve the country's digital infrastructure. Speaking at a recent private sector organization of Jamaica PSOJ forum, both Digicel Group's chairman Dennis O'Brien and CEO of CNW Communications PLC Inge Smits argued that tax relief, facilitating greater access to digital services, and broadband penetration are critical for Jamaica to grow. The operators said they need more room to improve service delivery and are calling for closed-door discussions around the implementation of 5G technology in the country.
What's Hot was brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers, your best interest at heart. And when we come back, there's a new sheriff in town at JPS. What are his plans? Stay tuned for our Taking Stock exclusive. This segment of Taking Stock is brought to you by Bulwark Insurance Agent, insurance made easy, and Massey United Insurance. How good is your insurance? Welcome back to Taking Stock. A barrage of complaints has been directed at JPS throughout the years, but especially since the pandemic. Super high light bills and charging paying customers for those who steal electricity. Well, joining us now is the new president and CEO of JPS, Michel Gantois. Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And welcome to Jamaica. You've been here for a few months now. When did you come in? Was it July?
Mid-July, right in the middle of the pandemic, yes.
Yes. What was that like, coming to a brand new job, a brand new country in the middle of a pandemic?
Well, it's been a roller coaster. It's been pretty hard, to be honest, with the elections, the COVID, new team, new company, many problems to solve. Yeah, it's been pretty difficult.
Yes. Tell me a little bit about yourself. You've been in the energy sector for a long time?
Oh, yeah, my God. For more than 20 years, yeah, I've been in the energy sectors, but I've been everywhere in the world with electricity or energy companies in Australia, in Asia, Africa, Europe, North America, South America. So that's, I've been around the world, yes.
I hear an accent, and I know your last name is Gantois, which sounds French. Where are you from?
So I'm from Belgium, and indeed my mother tongue is French, and that explains the pretty heavy French accent. So I hope it's not a problem and people can understand me. But yes, there's a French accent there.
No, well, we speak patois.
That's true. That is true.
Which is a French word, but the language is far from it, yeah?
I know it is that, yeah, hard for me to understand it.
Mm-hmm. But you've come into a very difficult job. Running JPS it's I'm sure, as you have discovered over your few months here, it's not only about running an energy company, but being the monopoly distributor in Jamaica and a public utility, a public service. You have very big shoes to fill. JPS is probably one of the most, if not the most heavily criticized company in Jamaica.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's vital to I think the life of every Jamaicans and every business. So we understand the scrutiny and the fact that it's in the spotlight all the time. And yeah, so yes, it's a bit of a challenge because it's so important to everybody's existence.
Is it like that elsewhere in the world where you run utility companies, where the company is under such public scrutiny all the time?
Yeah, I mean, generally, large energy companies are indeed scrutinized pretty heavily. It's more the case for utilities when they are the sole distributor of electricity. It's even more so. But generally, we provide such an important element of the life of people, just like water, for example, that it's inevitable that we are scrutinized by everyone. Yes.
So one of the big issues in Jamaica is electricity theft. And JPS, right around the time that you arrived on the island, this was big in the news because JPS, your social media people tweeted out that losses incurred due to illegal activity, aka theft, is shared between JPS and all the customers. Unfortunately, a line item on JPS bill is not reflective of this specific charge. And that generated this public outrage. People are saying, hold on. So people steal electricity. This is very well known. But I have to pay for it. Me, the paying customer, I have to pay for electricity that is stolen. A lot of people thought this was unjust. Even the energy minister at the time, Fable Williams, said this was unjust. So tell me what's going on there. Why do I have to pay for electricity that other people steal?
Yeah, I mean, first, of course, to just what you said, we have to be careful with the pronouncements of ministers and public servants just before elections. There's a slightly different context and reason why people say certain things just before elections. But otherwise, the theft of electricity is indeed a serious problem, and I totally agree with the public and the consumers that it is a shame, and it is people should be outraged, and we are outraged as well as a company, and it's indeed, and we've been very public and very vocal in saying that the theft of electricity is exactly that. It's a theft. It's a crime. It's no different than a thief snatching the bag of an old lady in the parking lot of a supermarket, or people entering into your home and stealing your television. it's a crime, and it's a crime with victims. And the victims are you, me, and every paying customers in these countries. There's also a misperception that JPS sort of doesn't suffer from the theft of electricity, and that's not true. We actually have to shoulder part of the burden, part of the loss of electricity. So we suffer, and our shareholders suffer from the theft of electricity. But the large part of that theft of electricity is indeed reflected in the bills. And so it's so important to us and to the customers that we have indeed been fighting that problems for years. But we've been looking also at what happens in many other countries where we have theft of electricity. In Latin America and Brazil, Ecuador, in other countries in the world, Pakistan, where I worked and lived before. And nowhere have we seen that the problem of the theft of electricity is resolved entirely by the incumbent utility. And there are reasons for that. Usually the theft of electricity is due to a culture of impunity. It is due to poverty and vulnerable communities, especially now with COVID, that cannot afford to pay for electricity. And so some people don't have the financial means to pay for electricity, but most people simply steal, and they know they can get away with it. They know they're not being prosecuted. They know that there's a general culture of impunity for stealing water or electricity, and nobody's doing anything about that. Now, when you think about that this way, JPS is doing its share of trying to solve that issue with a lot of technical programs, tens of millions of dollars of investment to resolve part of the problems at all levels. But what we cannot do, and we shouldn't do, is substitute ourselves to the state in helping vulnerable customers. That's something that the state should do, as well as pursuing criminals. We do not have the monopoly of the use of violence to prosecute thieves. That's something that, of course, the government should do with the proper systems, with the proper courts of laws, the proper laws and regulations to ensure that thieves are indeed punished. I was about to say as well that we are also pursuing a lot of other programs. We're looking at interacting more and more with the communities where we see a high percentage of thefts, and really trying to engage people and at the community level, really try to convince them and convert them from people who steal electricity to people who pay for the electricity they
paying customers.
consume. Because remember that we produce at the end of the day the electricity, so it has to be paid for. And one of the very important elements is we also hope, frankly, that all the people listening to us right now on these programs and all the consumers can play a part. People forget that they can play a very active part in fighting the theft of electricity. It's everybody's duty to report. Well, they can report theft of electricity. We actually look and listen and hear very carefully when people are reporting electricity. We try to investigate as many as possible, but we can't report. We can't, of course, investigate every single instances, but we really make an effort to investigate. But we also need to change the perception of what the theft of electricity is. We need to have children educated and shaming their parents and their neighbors. We need to have church leaders, community leaders in various form lead by example and show some ethical leadership. And I think that's important. People have to be told this is not acceptable. In this community, we don't do that because the electricity that you and you steal, those other poor people, those other families pay for that. So everybody has a role to play. We play technical roles. The government has a role to play with poverty alleviations and with crime fighting. And everybody in the community has also a role to play.
It's such a difficult social problem that you're encountering here, Michael, because it's so deeply entwined in the fabric of Jamaican culture. Like you said, the electricity theft is just seen as normal. And you also run into issues when you have the crime situation into play. When you have, if you are in a community and your neighbor whose son is in a gang is stealing electricity, you're not going to report that person out of fear.
Well, the reporting, of course, can be anonymous, but we understand the dynamic. I mean, to give you some other examples, well, actually, it will be on the app very soon. So we want the app, by the way, and we'll come to that. We want the app to be very interactive and to allow people to really integrate that into the way they live. And, for example, allow the reporting of theft, because we think it's really essential to our lives. But when we also deploy teams to remove, the illegal connections and to investigate the theft of electricity, sometimes we are being shot at. Sometimes our teams, even with the police accompanying us, we are being shot at. So we understand the violence, we understand the difficulty in some neighborhoods. But if we never address that, then the problems will never change. And so despite the difficulties, we have to persevere and try our best, all collectively, all together, to resolve that problem.
Right. Now, another big issue, Michael, especially since the pandemic hit, has been the cost of electricity. Jamaica does have a very high cost of electricity, even though it's come down significantly in the past 10 years or so. Our cost of electricity is still up there. What's JPS doing to bring that down for the average person?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question and a very sensitive one as well. I mean, first, we have started educating the customers and the people about exactly what's in the cost of electricity and why it is so high. The cost of electricity in Jamaica is relatively high. It's a small country, it's an island, so inevitably what we've seen everywhere in the world is that the cost of electricity for this kind of country tends to be higher because you don't benefit from, large-scale projects. What we also at pain to explain sometimes is that more than 2/3 of the cost of electricity that you see on your bill is not something that we at JPS control. It is made up of taxes that you pay, but we immediately pay back to the government because it helps the treasury, but we don't control that. It's for the government. It is made up of the cost of fuel that we buy from outside the islands, fuel, oil, and gas that we need to run our power plants to produce electricity. But we are unfortunately dependent on suppliers from somewhere else in the world, and we have to pay for that fuel to produce electricity. And that's not something we control either. There have been long-term agreements that have been signed many years ago to supply that fuel, and we cannot change anything of that at JPS. And finally, there is electricity that we at JPS buy from other suppliers, other companies that produce electricity, and we buy it from them. So the vast majority of what you see on the bill is something we cannot change at all. Unfortunately, you see your name on the bill and you think that we receive all that money and we keep it, and it is not true. What we can control is 1/3 of that cost. And 1/3 of that cost is made up of
which is
what you see in the streets is the wires, the transformers, all the infrastructure that is necessary to bring the electricity to your homes.
So that's part of the electricity loss that is reported. So losses include both theft and just inefficiency, old stuff.
They're correct. And there are some pure technical losses. They are actually the smallest proportion of the total losses in the system. But there are inevitably, of course, losses in the system because just when you transport electricity from one part of the island to another, there are just normal technical electrical losses along the way in the systems that we're looking at as well. We're always trying to optimize and reduce those losses. But just the investment in those poles, in those lines, in those infrastructure, in the people and the vehicles that come to repair your lines, all those costs have to be paid for. And that's what we look at in terms of expenditure. And that's what we're trying to always optimize, control, and minimize. But there's a limit because we cannot reduce the cost too much because then you won't have the customer service that you require. You will not get the reliability of electricity, and people want to make sure that when you turn the switch on in the evening, they get electricity. And finally, we've witnessed in the last few weeks, for example, with all the rains and the storms, there have been a lot of events, and what we have to do is to deploy teams in the evening, during the weekends, with the vehicles to repair those lines so that people would not be without electricity for more than a few hours. So all of these expenses, all of these teams, those vehicles that help the customers have to be paid for. And that's 1/3 of the bill that we're responsible for.
But a big trend in electricity sector around the world has been moving, energy sector generally has been moving more towards renewable energy. So, and I know the government of Jamaica has set an ambitious target to hit, I think 50% by, I don't remember what year, but 50% of our electricity coming from renewable sources within a decade or two. How far advanced are we in getting to that goal? Because that could make a big difference in what we pay for electricity.
Yeah, and of course we have to be careful once again with pronouncements. I mean, I'm a big fan personally of renewables, and I work with renewables everywhere in the world. We are not very advanced yet. I think probably Jamaica, like a lot of other countries, are a bit behind in terms of the introduction of renewable. Having said that, you probably want to be careful with the introduction of renewables. What we have noticed in different countries is that renewables are fantastic because you don't depend anymore from suppliers of fuel from outside. So you're autonomous. That's a good thing. It's also reduced, of course, the CO2 emissions. So that's a fantastic thing for the health of our population, of our children. But sometimes the sun doesn't shine, and sometimes the wind doesn't blow. And so even if you have a lot of renewable, you still need the backup of traditional thermal power plants that are powered with gas or with oil. And so you need anyway other options for the evening or when the sun doesn't shine or wind doesn't blow. And so
what's the ideal
the introduction of renewable is good.
What's the ideal
what
mix?
we notice, I think, yeah, I mean, ideally, of course, 100% if you can afford it, but no country is going there. What we've noticed in countries that have been pretty aggressive in introducing renewable is that when you go past 20%, perhaps 30%, you have a lot of troubles with your grid. So very technically, the grid has to be reinforced. You need batteries. You need to build additional transmission lines. You need additional power plants to take over, when your renewable is not producing. And so you start having a lot of issues also, frankly, with neighbors. They're not always happy to have the wind turbines in the neighborhood. You need a lot of space for renewables, which sometimes Jamaica doesn't have. So renewables are fantastic, but they're not the one and only solution to all our problems. They have to be introduced. They're part of the mix. They're part of the solutions. But they have to be introduced in conjunction, in combination with what we have already on the island.
So based on what you've said, you think the Prime Minister's goal to hit 50% by 2030 is unrealistic?
No, I think it's good. It's good to have ambitious goals, and most countries have gone into that direction. Say, let's put very, very ambitious goals because we have to strive to once again reduce CO2s and to be autonomous. I think those goals are worthwhile to pursue. What happens is that over the years, and when you introduce more renewables, and when you look at hopefully the cost of renewable even going down and being cheaper in batteries, then you can adjust, I think, the speed and the kind of renewable you introduce into the country. But it's good to have an aspirational goal. I think it's worth it. But in practice, you have to be careful that you don't go too fast to endanger the cost of electricity, that you don't push it too high, and then you don't endanger the reliability of electricity. People still want to have the electricity whenever they need it, not whenever there is sun or there is wind. So we have to be careful. And I think that, again, government is right to pursue an ambitious goals, and then it has to be brought down to reality and see how it works in practice.
The other part of it, when we talk about high electricity bills, there is this very big perception that JPS, as we say in Jamaica, JPS just thief. A lot of people feel like not only are the bills just too high, they're unjustly high. And I know that the OUR recently did their investigations and vindicated JPS in that, but people still aren't buying it. People say, well, OUR is in cahoots with JPS. I've been at pains over the past few months doing a feature called Light Bill Match, trying to break down and explain why the bills are what they are. But there still is a lot of skepticism about how JPS bills its customers. And I know you've only been there for a few months, so you can't get into the details and we don't have time. But I want you to address that skepticism about the fairness of how you bill customers.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I mean, obviously that problem flared up recently because with a lot of residential customers staying home and obviously consuming more and turning on more their air conditioning and so on, there's been a spike in consumption and therefore the bill has increased. So people are uncertain and they rightfully, try to understand why their bill is going up. And of course, because our name is on the bill, we understand that they're the first one they complain about. That's fair, that's human. But we are under scrutiny and audit from the regulator all the time. And I can tell you, the regulator is not a friend. It's a regulator. They're doing their job at arm's length. They're very, very tough with us. And so they spend weeks and weeks analyzing of figures or track record in billing and other things, by the way. They do it regularly, and the result was amazing. I've never seen result that good where they came and they said, I think that 99.8% of our billing was correct. They couldn't find fault in our billing system. Now, we're not perfect at JPS, and we can always improve what we're doing, and we can always improve the way we talk to customers, we listen to customers, we integrate their feedback into our actions. We totally understand that, and we have to find in ourselves a new sense of humility and respect for the customers. But not everything we do is bad. And that was one vindication where finally the OUR, once again, not our friend, they have no reason to be nice to us, said, well, we have to recognize that JPS is doing a fantastic job when it comes to the accuracy of billing for electricity. And I think that's an important message is, we all should be unsatisfied with the theft of electricity. We have to look at the consumption of electricity. We try to educate people on consuming less, but at least the fault is not in the billing of electricity by JPS. We're doing that well. That the few things we do well, and we do that very well.
But can you make it simpler for customers? Because one of the things I learned in doing the Light Bill Match series is that the billing is really complicated. So I was one of those whose light bills went up, and I knew it was partly because my family was staying at home because of COVID and we were consuming more, but I still couldn't justify everything. So I started really looking into it, doing all the math and the analysis behind it, but it's just so confusing for the average person. Can't you make that simpler?
No, absolutely. And when I arrived, I realized that a lot of the communication coming from JPS, a lot of the format of the bills, the messages you receive were still a little bit of that sort of old-fashioned utility mentality. And so I took it upon myself to change the tone of the conversation we're having with customers. And one of the actions we have taken is to change the design of the bill. And so very soon in December, we're going to introduce a new bill that we hope will solve part of the issues with misunderstandings about the elements of the bills. We've had a lot of a different focus group with customers to try to see how, what you need to understand better. If we change the design of the bill, would you understand better? So we're going to introduce that new format. We hope it works. But if it doesn't work, we want to hear the feedback from the customer and says, we still don't understand that, or what is this exactly? Can you do that better? Because we're always striving now to improve, and we want to hear from the customers. But hopefully it will work better. People will understand better their bill in the next few weeks.
Another thing that you get criticized for, I feel like I'm just going through a long list because there are so many. JPS is just so often criticized, and I'm one of them who does it too, who levels the criticism. But the reliability, so the blackouts, the power outages, especially those unscheduled ones where you just all of a sudden have a blackout, power gone for hours, sometimes for days. I even know how to ask the question. You must do better. And that's a statement, not a question.
No, and once again, it's one of those points, just like with the customer, where we always striving to do better and we're never happy, even when we hit some internal target or the targets given to us by the regulator, because they're checking that as well. We're never happy and we try to do better. And so, we continue to do better because there's always a space to improve. But frankly, the record has shown that for example, between 2019 and 2020, there's been a 20% improvement in the frequency of the outages. So we are sort of chipping away at that, at the length and the frequency of outages and working to do it better. No, there are many things we're doing. Obviously, we're putting many more effort in terms of investment. We're putting smart technology. We are adding transmission lines, smart meters, and also widgets to detect where the losses are, so we can deploy the teams more precisely and faster to repair the lines when there's an outage. So we're doing a technology part of the solution. We also propose to the regulator to build additional line, but remember, we need their approval to spend more money because they're checking, make sure that we spend the money properly. In the next 3 years, we will also replace 6,800 poles, transmission pole, distribution poles. So all those poles you see next to the roads, we're going to replace 6,800 of them. So that's part of what we're doing all the time. We're also getting better and better at identify the places where we need to do some trimming of the vegetation, because when the vegetation grows into the power line, it disturbs once again the transmission and distribution of electricity. But it's a bit of a balancing act as well. Because of COVID, we haven't been able to deploy the team as efficiently, and people stay home, so we don't want to disturb people for a lot of planned outages. And then in terms of unplanned outages, once again, we've had, our team, frankly, has done a remarkable job as resolving most of the thousands of interruption of electricity we've had in the island the last few weeks, because every time we had those rain, just during the weekends and sometimes during the night, we deployed the teams, and in a matter of hours, we could resolve the issues. It's not an easy job, especially when, and we've all seen the pictures and the videos of road collapsing. We have to access land that are very difficult to access to repair the lines and restore services. So we're doing all this. Not an easy job. We can always do better, but we're really striving, and the teams do a remarkable job to come and help the customer.
Well, what's the global standard? I don't know how outages are measured. I'm sure there is a way that you guys measure it. What's the global standard, and where does Jamaica fall in that?
Well, the different standards for, once again, the frequency and the length of interruptions, the different technical measures. We're not the best, we're not the worst. Frankly, we're not too bad. I mean, considering where we are in terms of geography as well, and the standards depends a little bit on whether it's a country like the one I come from, Belgium, when it's flat and you have people living everywhere, you can access everywhere. There's no forest, there's no mountains. Versus a country like Jamaica, where you have regions that are really difficult to access, and so you have to take that into account. Topography, geography matters. But it's not bad at all, considering all those factors. Our track record in Jamaica.
So coming to the current situation now with the COVID-19 pandemic, Jamaica experienced its first case back in March. How has this affected? And I know you mentioned that it's affected the ability of your team to go out and do repairs as quickly. But in terms of customer service, we've been seeing long lines. We're used to seeing long lines outside of certain places, certain offices. How has it affected the way that JPS does business and interacts with customers?
Well, it's been a dramatic change and very accelerated, so we had to adapt very quickly. So we had to close offices. We had, of course, to discipline the number of people who come into the office. We were cleaning the offices all the time. So it's been we have adjusted like any business that interact with customers on the day-to-day basis. But also what we've seen is a shift to the internet, to websites, people going on social medias to either pay the bills or interact with us or ask for explanations about their bills or for services. So we've seen a shift from physical presence to an online presence that is accelerated. And we hope, by the way, that the mobile app will help people more. With the mobile app, you really don't need to come to any office of JPS anymore. Everything can be done online. So we've been impacted. We've been really careful in protecting both our staff and our customers, maintaining social distance, respecting the different protocol. But the biggest thing we've seen is a shift to online way of doing business.
Yes, yes. And I have to mention, I really do like your app. I did a review of the app very recently, and it's a vast and dramatic improvement over the previous app, which just didn't work. It wasn't functional at all. So coming now to, do you foresee a time when a company like JPS might be irrelevant because of all the changes in the energy sector? People are moving towards electric vehicle ownership. Well, you provide electricity, so that, that would make it still relevant. But people are also setting up their own sources of renewable energy in their homes and in their businesses. Is there a time that you foresee in the future that you might be phased out?
Yeah, that's sort of a big question that a lot of different countries have asked. And recently, when I was in Australia, it was asked there. But I heard a lot of debates on the role, for example, of incumbent utilities also in Europe and the US. And people initially thought, yeah, we could all produce, electricity with solar panels or small wind turbines in our backyard, and therefore we won't need, that big central utility anymore. The reality is is much more sort of nuanced than that. First, we have to be very careful. If we see who, for example, is putting solar panels with batteries on their roofs or their backyard, or is going with their own production of electricity, it's usually big industrial or commercial companies. It's not the residential customers, because many of them live, for example, in apartments or rent the house. They don't own the house, and so it's difficult to be self-sufficient and completely autonomous. Now, when a big customer doesn't take the electricity anymore from the grid, what it means as well is good for them, and that's an inevitable trend in the world. But that means that if they pay less for electricity, unfortunately, more residential customers have to pay for the infrastructure that we have put in place and we have to maintain. So we've been at pain to explain also to those customers and to the government that they have to be very careful. The more we have big customers switching off from the grid, which is maybe good for them, the worse it is for the residential customers who can't do the same and still have to pay for the infrastructure.
But those businesses have to look out for their own interest as well.
Absolutely, but all the other countries also looking at how do we rebalance basically the charges for the transmission line, the distribution line, and the transformer. So all the expenses that we deploy as a company to make sure that you have the electricity, who is paying for them? And that's not so much a problem with JPS. It's a choice of a society of saying, we think that industrial and commercial customers, even if they only use electricity from the grid at night, for example, when there's no sun, or a few hours a day, still should pay more. And that's a choice as a society that we have to make of who pays for the infrastructure that is needed to transport and distribute the electricity. Not an easy solution. So we know of this issue, it happens, but it creates a lot of additional problems that have to be solved, not just by the incumbent utility, but as a dialogue between different stakeholders, the different parties, the different customers, and we have to define new rules for a world that is evolving. And what we don't want is actually always press the charges to the more vulnerable customers who are unable to change anything in terms of the supply of electricity.
That is a really important debate, and I expect that we're going to be talking about that a lot more in the next coming years. Before you go though, Michael, so you've been here July, August, September, October, November, 4 months, not very long, but what have you noticed as the biggest challenge for the sector so far and for the company?
Well, I mean, there have been a lot of challenge. Obviously, the customer satisfaction is one that we have to strive and work on, and I think we've seen, by the way, a vast improvement the last 6 months since I arrived, and we started changing the dialogue in the way the customer react and the sort of positive reaction from the customers. You mentioned one, which is the introduction of electric vehicles. More and more big customers switching to their own supply of electricity. That's a big challenge we have to handle. The price of fuel that we import is one that we have to handle. We have signed long-term contract as a country, not just as a company, and we have to look at those because yes, the electricity is very expensive, partially because of the gas we import. That's an issue as well. And then, of course, the COVID and the pandemic has dramatically reduced the demand for electricity, and that means a lot of people are not consuming, and so it puts a pressure on us as a company and therefore on the customers. And a lot of people are having difficulties paying for the electricity. And so we've
Is that
also
people
helped
are not consuming? I thought we were consuming more because more people have been staying home.
Correct. The residential customers are consuming more, but the commercial and industrial customers are hurt. And so the hotels, for example, closing or barely running.
Right, true.
And
that's a big part of your business.
Exactly. And because they're consuming less, in total, it's still a much lower production of electricity.
So how much has your revenue been hit? How much has your revenue been hit since COVID then?
Oh, by close to probably 10%. So it's a big reduction in demand in total because of that total reduction in electricity. So even if residential customers consume more in total, it's been pretty dramatic reduction.
Wow. So how does this affect the plans for an IPO? So I know the government had wanted to sell their 20% stake in JPS. I don't know how integral you have been to that conversation, but a lot of people in the public have been looking forward to the JPS IPO, which was initially scheduled for 2020. I'm guessing it won't happen this year again.
Well, so obviously that's not that's the government shilling their share. So that's not part of the management, but definitely the information, everything I'm saying is something that is very public, that has to be made very transparent to potential investors, because people have to know that obviously JPS is suffering a lot, like everybody else, in the context of COVID for all the elements we have mentioned. And then people have to make their own choices to whether or not they believe that in the long term it's going to be much, much better, or for how long they think that the JPS will suffer. But we don't know. That is not something we control. But definitely, COVID has a short-term impact for JPS for months to come, and we hope to get out of that and to create more value for customers and for investors, obviously.
And finally, before you go, Michael, what's the one thing during your tenure? I don't know how long you intend to stay with us, but what's the one thing you would like to improve? Well,
that's a big question. But once again, generally speaking, I want to really change JPS from this, legacy, old-style utility company that behaves like a monopoly, even though it is, and I want to change that. I have managed energy companies that were not monopoly, and so in my blood, in my DNA, in my beliefs, we have to treat customers as if they could go tomorrow somewhere else to get the electricity. We have to earn the respect of the customers. We have to treat them differently. We have to listen to them more. I think that's the biggest objective I have for the company, and everything should be oriented towards that goal, while still, of course, providing profitability to our shareholders. But if we focus and we do the right thing for the customers, that would be, for me, a huge victory to change the image and the reputation and the track record of the company. And I really hope that we can achieve that.
Thank you so much for speaking with me, Michael. All the best.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Up next, we've got your market recap, and the analysts are standing by. This segment of Taking Stock was brought to you by Bulwark Insurance Agent, insurance made easy, and Massey United Insurance. How good is your insurance?
Time now for your market recap, brought to you by Sagicor Investments. Think wealth, think Sagicor Investments. It was another good week for the Jamaica Stock Exchange, with a combined index up more than 8,000 points, or more than 2%. 100 stocks traded across both the main and junior markets of the JSE for the week ending Friday, November 27, 2020. 50 advanced, 36 declined, and 14 stayed the same. Nearly 355 million shares changed hands on the Jamaican dollar market, totaling nearly $1.3 billion. Select F dominated trading last week, taking up 71% of market volume. The stock gained 2 cents to open the week at 67 cents. Trans-Jamaican Highway traded the second highest, with people buying and selling nearly 33 million shares in the company. The stock lost 5 cents to open the week at $1.24. And Wigton Wind Farm ordinary shares rounded out the most traded, taking up 3% of market volume. The stock lost 1 cent to open the week at 73 cents. Now let's see who had the biggest gains. Key Insurance Company jumped 27% to close last week at $10.02. Eppley rose nearly 22% to close last week at $24.44. And rounding off the biggest gains, Grace Kennedy's stock advanced nearly 15% to open this week at $66.69. On the losing side now, Cargo Handlers fell 16% to close last week at $6.35. Stanley Motor ordinary shares also fell 16% to end last week at $4.74 a share. Consolidated Bakeries Jamaica lost 12%, down to $1.22. Market Recap was brought to you by Sagicor Investments. Think wealth, think Sagicor Investments.
This segment of Taking Stock, The Analysts, is brought to you by Ideal Portfolio Services. Welcome back to Taking Stock. I've got a team of analysts to examine the week in business. I'm joined by Senior Wealth Advisor at Ideal Portfolio Services, Orick Angus, and Research and Strategy Analyst at Sagicor Investments, Jodian Aris. Hey, Orick. Hey, Jodian. How you guys doing? You in the Christmas spirit yet, like me?
Hi, Kalilah. Not yet for me.
Jodian, where's your Christmas cheer?
I'm getting there.
Bit by bit. We're actually recording this on Black Friday. Either of you doing any shopping?
No. All shopping were done online before.
So that's again, Orick?
All the shopping was done online leading up to today.
Oh, before Black Friday. Well, I noticed that the Christmas shopping season started a bit early this year. I surely put up my decorations early. I've been doing shopping well before Black Friday myself. So I don't know if that has anything to do with Fontana's results. I don't think it does, since these results would have come out early.
No, I don't think it does either.
But they've more than doubled their profits for their first quarter. Tell me what you've noticed with Fontana, Orick.
That was for me a little surprising, but it's good for them.
Why is it surprising?
300% increase is very significant coming out.
300%. Wow.
Yeah, man. 291. So approximately.
Pretty close.
So they pretty much more than double the profits, almost tripled.
But we are in a pandemic, and people have been stocking up on medical supplies.
Exactly. So they would have been one of the companies who we would have considered to be one of the essential players coming out of the pandemic. Like I said, I expect them to do well in terms of the magnitude of the performance. I am a little surprised, not that all surprised, but essentially what happened that revenues increased by 21%. That was like $1.1 billion when you compare 920 million for the 2019 period. That was mainly from prescription sales. They were able to maintain their costs. I believe the average cost based on selling and administrative expenses and promotional costs were minimal, to around 5%. The new Waterloo location would have increased brand presence for them, increased brand awareness, and most of the sales are coming out of that location. And based on an article that I read earlier this week, they're paying out monies to their shareholders as an incentive based on all that has been happening throughout this year. I think they're paying out roughly 8 cents per share, which is double the 4 cents that they paid last year, and the company is still in a good cash position. So all in all, it looks good. I'll recommend Fontana as a buy overall.
Fontana shareholders must be smiling right now. Disclosure, I'm a Fontana shareholder. I'm smiling.
Oh, good. A Christmas come soon for you.
Yes. But what's their top line looking like, the Orick? So we see that they've been increasing the profits. but have people actually been spending more? Have they been able to sell?
Yeah, so like I said, there are a 21% increase on the top line. That's mainly from prescription sales. Obviously, the retail side of the business would have been included in that marginally as well from the cosmetics and other retail products. So the top line is where most of the growth really came from. And then in addition to that, they were able to maintain or contain their costs on the books. So that's good.
So, Jodian, have you been following what's been going on there with Fontana? Were you surprised, like Orick, to see those results?
Yes, I think even though they're considered an essential sector, and during a time like COVID, you would probably see an uptick for persons seeking prescriptions and boosting healthcare in this time. It still is a bit of a surprise because they're anticipating that they would have, particularly on the retail side, probably feel that drag which would have pulled down. But I think what was even more impressive is that they would have had this increase in their finance costs associated with the build out for the Waterloo Square. And even with that increase, it was not a big drag. They were still able to record impressive profits. So that is really good. And I think part of what Orick said was that the new Fontana in Waterloo Square has been generating quite a bit of buzz and business for them. So they have actually gained new customers because of that location, which is really good.
Yeah, and they should have a decent quarter as we speak right now too, because Christmas, they sell toys. I was in there, my kids wanted everything. They sell Christmas decorations and supplies, all sorts of
home stuff.
Right, home stuff, yeah. But another company that's been doing well, Orick, is Carreras. They've noticed, I think it's an 8.5% increase in, what was it? Is it profit? Or revenue?
Revenues.
Revenue. Right. So tell me about those numbers there, Carreras.
For Carreras, I think they have performed fairly decent. In my opinion, they're performing as they should, despite COVID. As you said, based on the numbers, we saw a 8.5% increase in their revenue, which was about $3.2 billion. This last year, it's grown to $3.5 billion this year. So as you see, that's moderate growth. For the bottom line, they were able to generate 11% increase in their profits, and that's before tax, which came out to about 1.2 billion versus the 1.1 last year. Financially, I think the company remains in a very cash-rich position, and that's always been the nature of how they operate, given that there are always challenges that the company encounter in terms of taxes and stuff. COVID so I think because of that, they've always had a contingency plan to mitigate those issues. So COVID hasn't really affected their supply chain significantly. I think it is for the investor who is seeking income, and the company remains for that nature. The company has around 1.2 billion in cash that is available right now, and they're paying out a massive 17 cents per share in dividends next month, around December 16th.
They always are a good dividend
decent. Sorry, Kalilah?
They've always been a good dividend.
Exactly. So it's within my expectations. Nothing surprising like a Fontana there, but it's a good one to look at right now for those who seek income.
Jodian, you think so? Carreras sells tobacco products. You think people in a time like this tend to turn more towards those types of, cigarettes, the alcohol?
Yeah.
You kind of need that stress relief if that's stressful for you.
Yeah, I think if it is that you are already or particularly a smoker, if it is that you're finding yourself in a stressful situation, then chances are your volumes or your consumption should increase. However, it is still not an essential, and as such, it would face challenges within a COVID market. It's not as though now that I, in a situation where I would have extra money, I would go and buy, a cigarette or tobacco product, but it definitely will face some constraints. And I think the other issue with Carreras is that there is the illicit market that they have to compete with that does provide some challenges for them going forward, or has been providing challenges and should be until that is rectified. So, I mean, a big part for them is really to recover those the illegal space that has taken over, that has been competing with them. But I think if it is that you are a smoker and you find yourself, isolated in COVID, it's very likely that you could be increasing your volumes.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Eppley Caribbean Property Fund Value Fund. They were in the news just a few months ago for a share buyback, and they're doing another share buyback, quite close to the last one. Jodian, what do you make of that?
Well, I think it's within their policy. I mean, they have a repurchase share buyback policy that indicates that if it is that they find that the price of the stock is falling below what it is, the book value or the NAV, then they are mandated, or they have a right to step in and purchase shares to retain shareholder value.
And just stick a pin there, so the NAV being the net asset value.
Right. So I think that's what's happening there. I think we're within a market of COVID. There is really, CPFV is not the only stock that is, trading below its NAV. I think pretty much all the funds all the funds listed on the market are having that same issue, and they are just really coming into the market based on the fact that there is no relative to the NAV. So the NAV, as reported, I think at last was about 69 Barbadian cents, and that's translated to about $47 Jamaican. And when you compare that to where it is that it's trading at $40, it's like there's a big gap there, and as such, they're really just coming in to maintain shareholder value in the stock.
So, Orick, explain for our newbies what a share buyback is. How does that work?
It's when the company buys back some of the equity that is available on the open market. This usually sends a good signal to shareholders that they would want to retain the shares, because obviously the company is trying to invest more in the business versus having outsiders investing in the business. So in my opinion, that sends a good signal whenever you see a company buying back shares. So for example, I believe Exxon would have done that, Apple would have done it, most of these major companies would have done that, and as you can see, they're doing well. So I think Eppley is for value. They have been really consistent in providing shareholder value over the years. The company is growing, so we can all use these as good signal as to why the company is buying back the shares and why you don't want to buy them for yourself and try to keep as many as you can.
So Jodian, let's say I'm an existing shareholder in this stock, how does this affect me?
Well, it's good news for you, because when it is that a company buys back shares, they are no longer outstanding shares. And so your portion of what it is that you hold increases. So your earnings per share would then increase because you're dividing by a smaller number. So if
where are they buying these shares from? Are they my shares if I want to sell them?
If you want to share, they could buy your shares. Or if it is that you want to remain invested in the company, then it would be a higher earnings per share for you. So, you could opt if it is that you feel as though you would want whether cash, or you feel as though you have met your minimum return and you want to dispose of it, then you could at that point, get some gains, and it would chances are be at a higher value than what it is currently being traded at on the market, because they're really coming in at a discount and in essence also, pushing up the price.
Right. And what it also, just to add to Joy, what it also does is it kind of narrows the gap between demand and supply. So when there is less supply in the market and there's more demand, then obviously the price will increase over time.
And
from an economic standpoint. Yeah.
If you want to understand more about share buybacks, you can check out these other videos that we did. We also have a discussion on Eppley Caribbean Property Fund, Value Fund, when they were just doing the IPO. So you can check that video out up here or in the description box below. So thanks, Jodian. Thanks, Orick, for your input. Always good.
Thank you, Kalilah.
Take care.
Have a great evening.
You too. Bye.
This segment of Taking Stock, The Analysts, was brought to you by Ideal Portfolio Services.
That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share with a friend. Also subscribe to our newsletter at KalilahReynolds.com and turn on those post notifications so that you can be the first to see all of my features. We want to help people learn more about money so we can all get this money together. This week on Money Mondays JA, we're looking at your credit score. And on Money Moves JA, Supreme Ventures Services CEO Dennis Chung breaks down how to create a winning business strategy for your small business. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Kalilah Ray and follow at Taking Stock JA on Instagram. If you want to connect with the analysts this week, check the description box below for their contact information. Also visit our website, KalilahReynolds.com, for financial news you can use however you like it. Watch, listen, or read. Now tell a friend about Taking Stock. Investing is the new sexy. So let's make it cool to talk about money. I'm Kalilah Reynolds. Stay safe.